Hey everybody, so we're starting our series, A Transformed Life. So first of all, we're talking about transformed worship, and this is very important. Now, I don't know about you or if you're in the worship ministry or what you think of worship, but when I think of worship, I'm like, hey, that doesn't really apply to me too much because I can't sing. You know, I used to think of singing as the whole deal with worship, and I love to sing, so I would say I love to, but I'm not very good at it. But isn't that kind of sad if you can't be good at worshiping? But the fact is, if we understand this biblical passage we're going to look at here correctly, we can all be good at worshiping. It doesn't mean we're all going to be good at singing, okay? That's going to have to wait, at least for me and maybe some of you, until we get to heaven. That's when we'll get good at that. Hopefully we'll all be good at singing then. But worshiping is something we can be good at, because worshiping isn't just about singing. In fact, this is what the passage says, Romans 12. And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all He has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind He will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship Him. So as you dig into this passage, we notice it starts with, and so, dear brothers and sisters. Now that and so, or in some translations, therefore, it's tying something in from just many, many chapters before this. It's talking about God's awesome grace, how we're saved by faith, and how we have this eternal security in Christ, and all that is talked about, and His choosing us as being part of His family. That's all been talked about. And then after all of that, it says, and so, because of all this, dear brothers and sisters, it says, I want you to do something. And then he talks about this. And we're going to talk about that, and we will have talked about that, depending on when you're watching this, in the message. But we're talking about what that means to present ourselves to God and to this. But I want you to notice this is an appeal. The appeal to worship here is based on all these things about God. And then the wonderful thing is that what we're asked to do here is something that we can all do. We can present ourselves to God. We can give ourselves to God out of gratitude for what He's done for us. And sometimes some of us get into alternative forms of worship, things that we might put instead of God or in front of God or instead of worshiping God. But we will see here that we are able to appeal for worshiping God as who He is, because of who He is, because of all these things that have happened, plus because of some of the things He's personally done for us, because that's the appeal here, because of all He has done for you. And He hasn't done the same things for you as the guy or gal next to you. The person who lives next door, they might have a nicer car, a nicer house, and there's things that sometimes we compare to, thinking, well, God hasn't done that for me. Well, when we think of worship, we're not focusing on what we don't have. We're focusing on what we do have. It's a heart of gratitude. God has done things for me. So I'm worshiping because of who He is. I mean, that's based on these chapters before. He's a God of grace. He's a God of mercy. But I'm also worshiping Him because of what He has done in my life too. And there's specific things that I have in my life besides being saved that God has blessed me with. And I hope there's some of those things that you can think about too. But those are some of the things that motivate us to worship. But worship is such an important aspect of our life. You don't have to be good at singing. You do not have to be in the choir to be a worshiper, because worshiping God is being willing to give myself to God, offer myself a living sacrifice, not a dead one, not a one-time, here you go, God, but a constant, continual presentation of myself. Said, here I am, God. I want to glorify You. Worship points to the one worshiped. So my worship points me to the one being worshiped. I love what Pastor Ralph said one time when we were having an event. He talked about, we actually met at the church and had a short service. We were all dressed in our old clothes, and then we went out to serve in the community. He said, first we're going to worship in the seats, then we're going to worship in the streets. So worship isn't just what happens on a Sunday morning. It's what happens every day of our lives as living sacrifices. So enjoy your discussion and think about that and what aspects you can give thanks to God and worship Him for who He is and glorify Him, not just in your seats today, but in the streets this week too.